35% of people who retired last year did not stop working because they just had enough money to walk away and live off their savings. Instead, it was due to factors that were outside of their control. This from the latest Retirement Confidence Survey, and it shows us that 46% of people stopped sooner than expected. And of those, 76% of those early retirements were due to things like a health issue, the retiree's own health issue, or caregiving for a loved one, maybe changes at the employer or in the industry. So things that were maybe not welcome retirements. And if your retirement plan depends on you working until your late 60s or 70s, then this is one of the biggest risks to think about. In this video, we'll talk about what this means if you or somebody you care about might be in the same situation, and we'll discuss ways to hopefully reduce the damage if it happens to you. And spoiler alert, this is a messy topic. There's not just a simple solution. It's not just, oh, do a Roth conversion and that'll solve everything. Here's why this is so important. Unwanted early retirement can cause a chain reaction of events. You have fewer of those high earning years going into your Social Security calculation. You also have fewer years when you can save and add money to those retirement accounts, especially when it should be easiest in your peak earnings years. And you also have more years when you're taking withdrawals because you start earlier and that goes until your life expectancy. That's more years of spending to cover. Plus, you might find that there's a health insurance gap where you have to deal with private coverage before Medicare. And you may be forced to take Social Security a little bit earlier, and that brings down your monthly payment for life. The really tough part here is that this happens right when things are supposed to start getting a lot easier. Let's look at some of the research. David Blanchett looked at how unpredictable retirement ages could affect your retirement. He found that people planning to retire after age 61 actually ended up, on average, retiring about a half a year earlier than expected for each year after age 61. For example, if you were planning to retire at age 69, he found that you're more likely to retire at age 65 because 69 is 8 years past age 61. And then we take half a year for each, that's 4 years, and we back it up to when, on average, people would be more likely to retire. It's not a rule for everybody or a prediction, but this is what his research found. Plenty of people work longer and retire right on schedule. Now, this does make sense if you think about it. I mean, the longer of a time you have, the more likely it is that some kind of curveball could come in there. And really, I've seen both sides of this with clients. Sometimes that unexpected retirement causes a lot of distress, but other times it's actually, after the initial shock, it becomes a turning point and it's the best thing that could have happened. Maybe they were burned out or unhappy and just needed some sort of nudge to get out of the workforce. Maybe they could retire already. But there's a big difference between being nudged into retirement when you have all these resources and, on the other hand, it happening when you don't have much margin. Working longer is one of the most powerful ways to fix a retirement shortfall. It's kind of flipping over everything we pointed out before. You've got more years to save. Your Social Security calculation might look a little bit better. You have to fund fewer years. And of course, you get health insurance. So what I hope you can take away is to say, not that, well, I'll just keep on working until I'm 70 or something, but the question should be, what happens if I can't? So here's how you can potentially reduce some of the damage if you have an unwanted early retirement. The best thing you can do is to build flexibility before you need it. And I want to be very careful here because that answer can sound unfairly simple. Having more cushion helps, but I don't say that as a judgment because not everybody got dealt the same hand. People don't always have the same health or income or family responsibilities or opportunities in life. But the simple fact is, if work ends sooner than planned, then having more savings, less debt, fewer fixed expenses, those can all be very helpful. It goes back to the old saying, right, that money can't buy happiness, but it can certainly prevent or reduce some types of unhappiness. So easier said than done, but one solution here is just to save more money. And this is really difficult because you also have to live for today because tomorrow is not guaranteed. We'll talk a little bit more about finding that balance. But avoiding those high interest rate debts and having an emergency fund is certainly helpful. That can just buy you time so that you don't have to make desperate and rash decisions immediately. You may be able to land on your feet a little bit more gracefully. You also want to check your investment risk. You don't want to be too aggressive if that unwanted retirement comes during a downturn, which can sometimes be the case. Things are going bad for the company, which means things are going bad for you sometimes. So if you're gambling now and you think you might get more serious later, then you might have a little less time than you think. Who knows? I can't tell you. And at the same time, being too conservative might not allow your resources that you do have to grow enough. So it really is tricky. What I really hope you'll do is model a scenario where you have that forced early retirement. Just run the numbers, and this helps you figure out some of those balance questions. How much should I save versus how much can I splurge now? What are the trade offs I'm making? So, whatever tool you use, or if you have a financial planner, have that discussion. What happens if I can't work as long as the plan says? What if income stops 3 to 5 years earlier? What if I start Social Security a little bit earlier and get that lower payment for life? And as always, you don't have to start Social Security when you stop working. You might just spend from your assets, and sometimes that's a really tax smart way to do it. Figure out, just out of curiosity, what if you have to buy health insurance on your own for a few years before Medicare? And always keep in the back of your mind, which expenses can be cut quickly. Another biggie to think about is part-time work. And I know that that's really probably the last thing you would want at this point in life, is to start over on something. But any income can often help to slow the bleeding, and that can really make a big difference in a plan that is coming up a little bit short. And the good news is it can also help you with some structure and some socializing. And you might find that it's actually really low stress compared to what you were doing before. And, if it makes it work out financially, then that's not so bad. And let's talk about caregiving, because that was another big piece of this. Sometimes a person leaves their job because their own health issues force them out of the workforce. But sometimes they're caregiving. It might be a spouse, partner, parent, who knows? I would encourage you to figure out, keep your finger on the pulse of what resources are available in your area before a crisis hits. Just keep a little list somewhere. I think you want to have that as an option to hire somebody. I also get it if you just want to be there for your person. But easier said than done. Consider the option of hiring somebody if it is financially possible. And I know that's pretty tough, because caregiving can be, first of all, financially draining if you have to leave work. Maybe you're pretty much treading water if you're working and paying somebody else, but you're at least keeping your foot in the door. You're maybe getting benefits. You're maybe getting retirement account contributions. And caregiving is really hard. It's physically demanding, and you might not have the skills and even the energy or the ability to do the type of caregiving that somebody actually needs. That is absolutely one of the most difficult things to think about and do. So, have those conversations with your loved ones, but keep in mind just what your various options are. And on that note, I'd mention that many people do find a way through, even when it's not the retirement they expected. They might not have the financial resources they hoped for, but they can still have relationships and other ways of having a meaningful life. So I hope you found that helpful. If you did, please leave a quick thumbs up, check out my website, and maybe send me an email. I look forward to talking with you soon.